How's it going, guys? Welcome to the second episode of this sort of talking, discussion-based kind of thing for siege topic debate questions, controversial things going on. Is siege this? Is siege that? My personal takes. We're going to be talking about the direction that the game is going in. Is the game getting too unrealistic? A lot of people are starting to feel that way about the game right now. In conversations that I've had with people talking about these new operators in particular, it's really kind of hit or miss. A lot of people either love the idea behind them, or they just really don't like it at all. And when I often ask them, okay, well, why don't you like it? They go, well, it's too out of the box. It's too unrealistic. And that sort of brings up an interesting question: Is Siege getting too unrealistic? Now this is my personal opinion, and there's nothing wrong if you guys disagree with me on it. But I really don't think that is the case. And the long version of that answer is yes, the game is getting less realistic, in really big air quotes. But there was nothing to really imply that the game was going to be ultra realistic and wasn't going to add operators like this in the future. And so my main argument with that, I can see where a lot of people are coming from, but if we look at let's look at the vanilla operators, for instance. So everything here besides when they released Black Ice, most of these characters are pretty, like, you could see this sort of thing in reality, right? Like, obviously, you would have a guy like Glaz with the big scope on a gun. I could see the laser tripwire thing. I could see, a guy with a big machine gun. I could see, kinda, Blitz. Trophy systems are a thing that exist in reality. I don't know if they could package the device into, like, a really small thing, but that's sort of the crux of his character, right? Is that he's like, they said it can only fit on tanks. Most of these are pretty solid, right? But there still are a couple of operators that sort of realm on the edge of realistic sci-fi fiction, right? Like Doc's stim pistol. Just no. Like there's no way you're gonna like package something that strong into like a little thing, and just basically be able to like pick up people from injury. You're gonna need a lot more than whatever Doc's got, unless he's got some really like special drugs in that thing. I'm sure Bandit probably educated him a little bit on that. Twitch's drone, the technology, for instance, like packaging everything into that little thing would be very difficult. But again, that's like the crux of her character, right? Is that, oh, the technology is so advanced, right? Castle barricades. Things that you can really kind of like fold up and are like that bullet resistant. You just fucking like put it out, no problem. Not really a thing, right? There's not a lot of materials, I think, that would be capable of doing that sort of thing. For the most part, everything here is pretty solid. But even the technology, if we don't want to talk about the technology specifically, let's talk about smoke. Okay, well, there goes the Geneva Convention right there, right? Using chemical weapons in the environments that he's using them in. Probably not okay. Probably gonna get a couple of complaints from the United Nations about that eventually. With the newer operators, it gets like the arguments tend to crop up after Operation Health in terms of, oh, the characters are getting too unrealistic, too sci-fi. But no one, I don't think anyone was particularly complaining around year one, year one, where we had characters like Blackbeard, who just has a bullet-resistant shield on his gun. Like, there's not a lot of see-through materials that are going to take more than a bullet or two. Like, you're not just gonna fucking like crop that thing on a gun and make it like really practical. Otherwise, everybody would be running around with bullet-resistant shields, right? Habana, completely just no way. Like, you're gonna package these little like disc-looking things into a launcher that happens to have like enough explosive force, and it's just like no. So that's like total sci-fi. Echo maybe, but the drone would have to house like some really complex technology. Again, Jackal is just completely total sci-fi. Like, there's no way this is like no. But the design is interesting enough to mesh into Siege's world, right? My main argument about Siege being more of a work of fiction and trying to embrace fictional aspects, at least, like, a lot of people have complaints about the Rainbow Six license being used too unrealistically, and that's fair. I think that's a valid criticism if you are more of a purist and you've read the book and you're into all of the older games. But Siege is a different IP entirely. It's using the Rainbow Six license, but it's like its own thing. And so there are a number of arguments you can make about how the game wasn't supposed to be super realistic from the start. First of all, Team Rainbow is a fictional organization, and a number of these different characters have access to different kinds of kits and weapons. I don't see anyone really irritated about the fact that basically every faction that we have introduced in this game, most of them should be using, logically speaking, if they're using the equipment that they use in reality, pretty much everybody here should be using MP5s or AR derivatives, because that's like the NATO, those are like the NATO guns. Why is Ella using a Czech SMG? Why isn't Okebi using a Korean AR? You know? But the idea of Team Rainbow is a work of fiction in and of itself, right? This sort of unilateral counter-terrorist unit without borders. I imagine in this kind of environment, it's pretty logical that various factions would have access to whatever kinds of kits that the individual operators that are a part of this unit would desire, right? Because you're already going over the international kind of restraints here, right? And we already got Smoke doing his thing. We already got Capitao doing his thing with asphyxiation bolts, right? Not, yeah, again, Geneva Convention, not very happy about that, I'm sure. I understand that Lion and Finka in particular have some really, could be interpreted as sort of egregious kind of abilities in terms of the realism meter, but you also have to look at it from a gameplay design perspective too. As it stands, Lion, Finka, and Dokebi are the only operators in the game that have these sorts of global abilities, where you just kind of hit a button and it does a thing. That's not to say that every single operator from now moving forward are going to have these. I don't think it's going to set a trend specifically, but it's making things a little bit more fleshed out, right? We need, I think, for Siege to be an interesting competitive game, there needs to be a little bit of active abilities, you know, like Thermite, like Pulse, and a little bit of passive stuff like Rook, and a little bit of, you know, just kind of hit a button and time it right and, you know, coordinate with your team. I don't think it's necessarily detracting from the realism aspect of the game, because I've already sort of seen Siege, the Siege universe, if you want to call it that, as a fictional enterprise in and of itself. But that's just my opinion, and I've been talking for a little while now. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. And if you think that my opinion is wrong, don't be mad. Just tell me why my opinion is wrong, and I will ignore it. And I appreciate all the feedback. I got the Finka video on the way, Operation Chimera drops on Tuesday, and I will see you all next time. Deuces.